The grand hall of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as representatives from over 300 species filed in through the enormous quantum crystal doors. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, though, of course. Ambassador Zix couldn't smell it, lacking a nose, but his sensory tendrils could detect enough stress pheromones to give him a headache, if he had a head. Xenobiology, it seems, is complex. Order in the chamber. High Counselor Vree's voice reverberated through the expansive room, her bioluminescent markings flashing a sharp purple. The usual formalities were notably absent: no grand entrances, no ceremonial greetings, not even the customary 17-minute harmonic resonance meditation. When a governing body that once spent 3 solar cycles debating the correct procedure for sneezing in zero gravity skips the usual rituals, it's clear things are dire. Ambassador Zix slithered up to the central podium, his scales shifting in hues of green and gray. The delegates fell into a tense, uneasy quiet, mostly quiet. A delegate in the back was still stress-molting. Esteemed colleague Zix began, his universal translator working overtime to relay his message in all 742 recognized languages of the Council. We are here today because, frankly, we made a catastrophic mistake. A nervous murmur swept through the chamber. The Igian representative, all 17 eyes wide with concern, raised a limb. Surely it's not as bad as the great miscalculation of Cycle 47, 0392. Zix's scales flushed crimson. Oh, it's much worse. He paused. Remember how we all thought humans were just those quirky bipedal creatures who spent most of their time debating whether frozen dairy products should have carbon-based crystals on top? The ones who hadn't even mastered basic telepathic communication yet. The chamber erupted in whispers. A Flaxian diplomat began to melt from the stress. Zix lowered his voice, a near whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. It turns out we grossly underestimated them. And by we, I mean primarily the Kraken Empire. May their molecules rest in peace. The High Counselor's bioluminescence shifted to a deep magenta. Ambassador, please explain to those who were not present during the incident. Zix's scales rippled with a nervous chuckle. How much time do we have? This is the kind of story that makes the Great Void Wars seem like a minor dispute over parking spaces in the Horsehead Nebula. He gestured to the holographic display behind him, which flickered on to show the Earth system. It all started when someone in the Kraken military command thought it would be a brilliant idea to test humanity's defenses. A small probe here, a little invasion there, nothing too serious. His sarcasm was so thick you could spread it on toast. The Kraken thought, and I quote from their last transmission, "What's the worst that could happen?" The room fell silent. Even the stress molting stopped. In the distance, someone dropped what sounded like a quantum spanner, and at least 3 delegates jumped, triggering the artificial gravity compensators. Zix's scales shifted to a grim shade of blue-gray. Shall I tell you why we're now implementing Protocol 47 billion, also known as don't even think about it, regarding any future military actions against Earth? And why half the Galactic Defense Force calls in sick at the mere mention of humanity? The chamber stayed silent, all eyes on Zix. A single drop of anxiety sweat from a Mercurian delegate sizzled as it hit the floor. Zix continued, "Let me tell you about the day we learned that humans don't just think outside the box, they tear the box apart, reinvent it as something terrifying, and then ask if you'd like to see what else they can do with basic geometry." The Kraken decided to attack 3 human colony worlds in the Orion Spur. In their defense, this is the last time anyone will defend a Kraken decision they thought they were being clever. No direct assault on Earth, just some strategic acquisitions of what they thought were poorly defended outposts. The hologram shifted to show the 3 colonies: New Providence, Arcturus Prime, and Horizon's Edge. The Kraken brought their usual invasion fleet: 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and about 200 smaller ships, the kind of force that typically has developing civilizations surrendering before breakfast. The Flaxian diplomat, now mostly reformed, raised a pseudopod. But surely they conducted proper intelligence gathering. Zix's laugh sounded like grinding gears. Oh, they did. They discovered humans had no energy shields, no quantum weaponry, no psychic defenses. Their ships were practically antiques by our standards. The Kraken thought it would be like taking nutrient paste from a larval form. The hologram shifted to show the start of the invasion. The Kraken attacked all 3 colonies simultaneously, expecting a swift victory. Instead, they were in for a surprise. "Do you know what they found?" Zix asked dramatically. The humans were waiting for them, not just waiting, they were excited. The chamber exploded in confused chittering. The concept of being excited about combat was foreign to most species. The first sign of something wrong came when the Kraken flagship, the ultimate victory, an ironic name, received a transmission from the human defenders. It simply read, "Finally, a challenge." Zix manipulated the controls, and battle footage began playing. "Watch this," he said, showing how human ships seemed to move randomly. Their battle formations made no tactical sense by any known military doctrine. The Kraken wasted precious minutes trying to analyze the pattern, but there wasn't one. The humans were improvising, making it up as they went along. The human ships were executing maneuvers that left several navigational experts in the room visibly uneasy. They were using their ship's structural weaknesses as weapons. Observe that the human captain deliberately allowed his ship to take a hit, causing debris to create a navigational hazard. Some even used damaged vessels as improvised missiles. One human ship, after losing its primary weapons, rammed a Kraken cruiser while playing a piece of music titled "Ride of the Valkyries." The hologram zoomed in on a particularly chaotic battle segment. Here's where things took an unexpected turn. The Kraken deployed their standard neural disruptor weapons, meant to incapacitate the organic crew by inducing fear. The humans, however, responded by laughing. They actually found the induced fear amusing, even ticklish. The Zaran delegate fainted, its crystalline form ringing as it hit the floor, but no one moved to assist. It seemed they were all too transfixed by the footage. The real shock came when the humans began utilizing their own technologies in ways no one had imagined. Those primitive projectile weapons we had dismissed? When they accelerated a chunk of metal to near relativistic speeds, energy shields proved utterly useless. Their outdated nuclear fusion tech? They repurposed it into weaponized nuclear pulse units. One human captain, to everyone's disbelief, detonated a nuclear device against their own hull plating just to change course. The footage showed the aftermath. All 3 colonies had successfully defended against the Kraken invasion, leaving the fleet in shambles. The Kraken survivors were retreating in a state of panic. The humans suffered losses, ships destroyed, lives lost, but here's the terrifying part: the more they lost, the more effective they became. Every destroyed human ship made the survivors more determined, more creative, and far more dangerous. Zix's scales darkened to a deep purple, reflecting profound disturbance. The Kraken commander sent a final message before retreating. They're not fighting a war, they're treating it like a game. A game they're enjoying. The commander later resigned, retreating to a remote moon to become a spiritual advisor, specializing in trauma-related meditation. But this was just the beginning, Zix said ominously. The humans hadn't even begun to get serious. And when humans get serious about warfare, they don't just break the rules, they rewrite them, set them on fire, and then use the ashes to draft plans for something even more terrifying. Zix continued, his scales shifting with a mix of awe and lingering fear. You may wonder what happened after the humans successfully defended their colonies. Surely they sought diplomatic solutions, perhaps filing a formal complaint with the council? Zix chuckled darkly. Oh, how I wish that had been the case. The hologram shifted to show Earth's primary military command center. The humans had something called Project Prometheus. Initially, their communications about it were intercepted and dismissed as another superweapon. How little we knew about human mythology! Prometheus wasn't just about fire. It was about giving power to those who weren't supposed to have it. While we were busy congratulating ourselves for our advanced tech, the humans had been studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on, every wrecked scout ship, every damaged probe, every piece of debris. But they weren't just studying it, they were improving it. And not in ways we could ever anticipate. The display showed a terrifying hybrid of human and Kraken technology. The humans took a standard Kraken shield generator, which required massive power, and hooked it up to something they called a potato battery. Yes, a potato or root vegetable. It shouldn't work. It made no sense. But somehow, they made it work better than the original. A Mirian delegate raised their servo arm, questioning the biological limitations of humans. Zix interrupted sharply, flashing warning colors. "Let me tell you about human limitations," Zix continued. "When the humans' communication relay was destroyed, they rigged a replacement using old radio technology and a repurposed microwave oven. When their power cells ran low, they jerry-rigged energy systems using scavenged parts and something called coffee. They even turned their environmental suits into improvised explosive devices while still wearing them. The hologram displayed a particularly chaotic battle sequence. This," Zix said, "was the moment we realized we'd made a terrible mistake. A human ship had lost all power. According to all standard protocols, they should have surrendered. But instead, the crew suited up, manually pushed their ship into position with handheld propulsion units, and used the powerless vessel as a gravity assist for their fighters. They called it the slingshot maneuver and treated it like a sport." But Project Prometheus wasn't just about technology. The humans had been preparing for something like this for centuries through something they called science fiction. They had been imagining ways to fight aliens for generations, exploring every possible scenario and strategy through their entertainment media. When we arrived, they didn't see alien invaders. They saw confirmation of every story they had ever told themselves. The hologram shifted again, showing human military adaptation statistics. Their learning curve wasn't just a curve, it was practically vertical. Every engagement taught them something new, and they shared these lessons with disturbing enthusiasm. They treated combat like a collective research project. Zix manipulated the controls to show more human innovations. They weaponized their own bacterial flora, creating biological defense systems that could make an enemy violently ill if they weren't human. And most disturbingly, they developed quantum-entangled memes. Yes, memes. These information packets used for humor that, in their own words, could bypass our cybersecurity by being too stupid. To be truly dangerous, the humans took their primitive nuclear fusion technology and turned it into what they called spicy improvised propulsion systems. However, the most terrifying aspect, Zix's scales shifted to a deep ultraviolet hue, reflecting existential dread, was the fact that they were enjoying themselves. Every new challenge we presented to them was met with enthusiasm. When we jammed their quantum communications, they began using modulated gravity waves to transmit messages, resorting to something called Morse code. When we deployed autonomous combat drones, they responded by reprogramming cleaning robots and arming them with makeshift weapons. In one instance, a human commander even sent a thank you note to a Kraken battle group for, as they put it, keeping things interesting. The room fell so silent you could hear the subtle hum of the quantum stabilizers embedded in the walls. Several species, known for their stoicism, were now visibly disturbed. Then, Zix's voice dropped to a near whisper. They started sharing their innovations with their civilian population. Do you know what happens when you give billions of humans access to experimental technology and tell them to go wild? I do. I wish I didn't, but I do. The hologram shifted to show human civilian ships joining the military operations, each modified in ways that defied all engineering conventions. They called it crowdsourcing the war effort. Civilian mining ships were converted into capital ship hunters, transport vessels turned into stealth infiltration craft, and someone even transformed an orbital garbage scow into a weaponized space shotgun, but perhaps the most chilling response was their approach to casualties. In most species, losses lead to demoralization. But the humans? They named their ships after fallen comrades and fought even harder. Every defeat made them more determined. They even created something called spite drives engines that ran on pure stubbornness, converting grief into propulsion energy. Zix's scales now shifted to a somber blue. And this, esteemed colleagues, was still just the beginning. The humans weren't just adapting, they were evolving their tactics faster than our predictive algorithms could handle. They didn't just think outside the box, they made us question the very nature of boxes. Zix adjusted his positional stabilizers, his scales pulsing with a rhythm that conveyed both awe and lingering fear. The human counterattack began with something called Operation Boomerang. They said, "What goes around comes around," though I suspect they named it that just to confuse our tactical AI systems with references to primitive throwing weapons. The hologram expanded to show the full galactic arm. The Kraken Empire expected a direct assault on their core worlds. It would have been logical, predictable, and exactly what any sensible species would have done. But the humans, being humans, decided that making sense was entirely optional. Instead, they split their fleet into what they called battle groups, each with a completely different tactical doctrine. Battle Group Alpha approached like a conventional military force, straight lines, proper formations, textbook maneuvers. Battle Group Beta appeared to be operating under combat protocols written by someone having a fever dream. And Battle Group Gamma? Well, the hologram showed ships moving in patterns that made several navigation experts cover their sensory organs. The Kraken deployed their defensive fleets using standard strategic protocols. The humans, however, responded by executing something they called the Terror Protocol. When we intercepted communications about it, we assumed it was some new superweapon. It was worse. Much worse. The hologram showed human ships beginning synchronized maneuvers. The Terror Protocol wasn't a weapon, it was a philosophical approach to warfare. Its core principle was, and I quote, "If it's stupid, but it works, it isn't stupid." The humans had essentially weaponized their own unpredictability. Zix gestured to the hologram, highlighting a battle sector. Battle Group Alpha engaged the Kraken fleet in a textbook confrontation. Everything was proceeding according to standard combat doctrine. Then, suddenly, Battle Group Beta dropped out of hyperspace inside a destroyed moon's debris field, using the radiation and gravitational distortions as stealth cover. Our sensors registered it as a navigational error, right up until they opened fire. A quantum observer raised their probability matrix. Surely such reckless tactics resulted in massive casualties. Oh, absolutely, Zix confirmed. But here's the thing about humans and casualties, they factor them into their strategies. They had backup plans for their backup plans. When Battle Group Beta lost ships, the crews launched escape pods modified with stealth technology and makeshift weapons. The display shifted to another sector, and while everyone focused on these battles, Battle Group Gamma was doing something even more unbelievable. The hologram showed human ships performing maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They turned their engines into weapons, their weapons into shields, and their shields into sensors. One captain rerouted the entire ship's power through the coffee maker, creating an electromagnetic pulse that disabled 3 Kraken dreadnoughts. The true terror of the Terror Protocol became evident when other species began witnessing these battles. The VXKT Confederacy, watching from their neutral territory, immediately signed a non-aggression pact with the humans. The Wath Collector, known for their strategic brilliance, actually requested human military advisors. However, they quickly regretted it when the humans suggested mounting faster-than-light drives on asteroids to create what they called really fast rocks. Zikra's scales shifted to a particularly unsettling shade of mauve. The humans had transformed warfare into a form of creative expression. They even held competitions for the most innovative tactical solutions. Their after-action reports read like entertainment reviews. One commander rated a battle as 3 stars would explode again. They started naming their military operations with puns. Do you know how terrifying it is to intercept a transmission about something called Operation Pizza Delivery only to find out it's a complex tactical maneuver involving slice-shaped fleet formations and something they called extra toppings? That turned out to be antimatter mines? The hologram shifted to show a particularly chaotic battle scene, a breaking point for many Kraken commanders. The humans launched what appeared to be a frontal assault on a heavily fortified position. Standard doctrine would have called for a strategic retreat, but instead, they broadcast an ancient human battle cry Leroy Jenkins and proceeded to do whatever this was. The hologram showed maneuvers that caused several tactical experts in the audience to excuse themselves. They turned their damaged ships into weapons, their debris into hazards, and their retreat paths into ambush zones. They used their destroyed vessels as gravitational anchor points for maneuvers that our physics divisions still can't explain. One human fleet commander, when informed that their tactics violated the laws of thermodynamics, reportedly responded with, "Laws are more like guidelines anyway." Zix manipulated the controls again, showing the full scope of the human counteroffensive. By this point, the Kraken Empire had lost not just ships and territory, but their entire understanding of warfare. The humans weren't just winning battles, they were rewriting the rules of engagement with each encounter. They turned defeat into opportunity, chaos into strategy, and desperation into inspiration. Other species, witnessing these events unfold, came to a unanimous conclusion: never make humanity feel the need to get creative with their military response. The Andromeda Association even added a new clause to their diplomatic protocols in the event of human involvement. Assume all traditional tactical doctrines are obsolete and potentially hilarious. Zix's scales settled into a pattern that conveyed both amusement and horror. And remember, this was just the military aspect of their response. We haven't even touched on what their civilian scientists were cooking up during their recreational research time, or as they call it, hold my beer moments. Zara's scales rippled with what could only be described as sympathetic embarrassment. Facing unprecedented losses and tactics that defied their military doctrine, the Kraken Empire decided to deploy what they considered their ultimate weapon, the Mind Shatter Array, a device capable of broadcasting fear and confusion directly into the enemy's consciousness, the kind of weapon that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. He paused, his chromatophores flickering with barely suppressed amusement. The humans responded by broadcasting something called dad jokes on the same frequency. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs, and a quantum intelligence representative actually had to reboot. You see? Zix continued, when faced with psychic warfare, the humans discovered that their most groan-inducing attempts at humor created what they called psychic static. The Mind Shatter Array couldn't penetrate their defenses because their minds were too busy processing puns like, "Why don't aliens eat clowns?" Because they taste funny. The hologram displayed the massive Mind Shatter Array powering up, only to be met by what seemed like an endless stream of human transmissions. The Kraken psychic operators actually requested reassignment. One of them left a note saying, "If I have to endure one more knock-knock joke, I'm joining a monastery." But the humans didn't stop there. Oh no, they launched their own psychological warfare campaign, which they called Operation Comedy Central. Instead of trying to intimidate the enemy, they began mocking them. The display showed intercepted human broadcasts, where they created memes about the Kraken military leadership. They turned battle footage into fail compilations, wrote catchy songs about Kraken tactical blunders, and broadcast them on all frequencies. The Kraken High Command had to contend with the fact that their troops were humming human victory shanties. The breaking point came when humans started sending gift baskets to defeated Kraken commanders. Actual gift baskets with notes like, "Better luck next time and thanks for the practice." One human admiral sent a Kraken fleet commander a self-help book titled "Losing Battles for Dummies" with helpful passages highlighted. Zix's scales shifted to a particularly amused shade of cayenne. The Kraken Empire had faced defeat before, but never humiliation. Their allies began distancing themselves. No one wanted to be associated with the species that had become the galaxy's biggest military meme. The Pixar Confederation even broke their 1,000-year alliance after a human hacked their central communication hub and played "Never Gonna Give You Up" on repeat. The hologram shifted to show various alien fleets hastily retreating from Kraken space. The humans had discovered something far more devastating than any weapon. They had realized that the galaxy's military forces had no defense against embarrassment. They started naming their ships things like Your Mom's Revenge and I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. They painted smiley faces on their dreadnoughts. One human commander, when confronted with a Kraken ultimatum, responded by sending a cat video just that. No message, no threats, just a small Earth feline knocking objects off a table. The Kraken strategic AI spent 3 weeks trying to decode the hidden meaning before suffering what we can only describe as a synthetic nervous breakdown. The display shifted again, showing the collapse of the Kraken military structure. Their command structure couldn't handle it. How do you maintain military discipline when your enemy treats galactic warfare like a joke? The humans' approach to warfare was like a grand joke, completely dismantling the serious concept of space combat. The final breaking point came when civilian ships joined the fray. Merchant vessels started airing cooking shows during battles, while mining ships dodged plasma torpedoes while discussing soap operas. One tourist yacht entered the combat zone, offering tactical commentary as if narrating a sports event. Zix's hologram manipulated controls to reveal the scale of the psychological impact once feared. The Crayon Empire was now the laughingstock of the galaxy, branded as the species that got memed into submission. The recruitment numbers plummeted, and their training facilities shut down as cadets became more interested in human memes than military strategy. Other species were horrified as humans dismantled not just the Crayon military but their entire reputation. The HFY Collective, known for its military might, renamed its warships to sound less threatening. The Quantum Hegemony revised its military doctrine with a new primary directive: if humans start laughing, retreat immediately. Zix couldn't help but express both amusement and fear. Humans had discovered that the most effective weapon wasn't advanced technology or firepower, but the ability to make their enemies look utterly ridiculous. Humans had turned intergalactic warfare into a comedy show where the Crayon were the unintentional stars. What made this even worse for the Crayon was that humans genuinely enjoyed it. They weren't just winning, they were having fun. Their battle reports started resembling entertainment reviews, giving style points for dramatic explosions and rating military encounters on something they called Yelp. Zix's final gesture showed the remnants of the Crayon fleet retreating to their home system. The Crayon weren't defeated by force alone, they were memed out of the galactic community. Their final transmission before surrendering was simply, "Please make them stop." Zix then switched to a more formal blue hue as he detailed the next phase. The surrender ceremony was held at a human space station called Party Central. Rather than imposing harsh reparations, the humans offered what they called the Chill Agreement, which included terms like repainting Crayon military ships in pink with smiley faces and renaming the Empire to the Crayon Cooperative of really nice people who learned their lesson. The humans also introduced new galactic laws, including the Don't Be a Space Jerk Act, which required all species to develop at least 3 good jokes before making first contact. They created something called the Intergalactic Whoopsie Prevention Protocol, mandating that any species considering military action must first watch a video of the Crayon's defeat, followed by a cooling-off period of chill vibes and lo-fi beats. A new position on the Galactic Council was established: the Keeper of the Vibe, whose sole job was to ensure no one was getting too full of themselves in the cosmic playground. The most lasting change, however, was the introduction of the Vibe Check Protocol, which required any species wishing to join the Galactic Council to prove they could laugh at themselves. The humans argued that any civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel should be mature enough to laugh at their own mistakes. Zix concluded this segment by reflecting on the new era of galactic peace, not achieved through fear or power, but through the unsettling realization that somewhere in the galaxy, there exists a species that will turn your military defeat into an intergalactic comedy special complete with viral dance challenges and merchandising. As Zix concluded the meeting, he shared a final story. Yesterday, someone from the Nexu Dominion decided to fire a warning shot across a human medical transporter, just for fun. The human captain's response was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. They parked their ship in front of the Nexu vessel, played an old human video called "You Can't Touch This" and danced the Running Man on their observation deck. Zix lowered his voice, a whisper that seemed to carry across the vast chamber that, my friends, was their warning shot. The humans were no longer just a military threat, they were a force that could turn warfare into entertainment. The message was clear: avoid war with humanity, not because you're afraid of losing, but because you're terrified of becoming the next viral sensation. The choice was simple: be a respected member of the galactic community, or be the species that becomes the subject of a human reaction GIF. Meeting adjourned.